We are continuing on now where we left off yesterday, which was on the customer detail. What I wanted to show you at the end of the session yesterday was the required documents here. When you add a required document by either right-clicking and hitting Add or hitting the Insert key, it lets you enter an 8-digit code, which is just a unique identifier for the document, a title, which is displayed here, and an age in the number of days. I just noticed that there's no way to edit that, so I made a note to allow that. So when you set up a document, you might say we want to have a Dun & Bradstreet report once a year, so you'd put 364 in there, and then you would get a Dun & Bradstreet report. It would turn yellow after a year, so you'd know it's time to get another one. So moving on to the next tab, which is a demographics tab. We have a source, where the customer came from. SIC is a standard industry classification. Date the customer went inactive. Question sets ties into the customer profile. So if I close this and go over to the profile, you can set up a customer profile which has a series of prompts and answers. And these are the sets here of questions. So by putting the question sets in the customer record, that will cause the system to prompt the operator to ask these questions as a script during order entry or other points in time where the system thinks that you're talking to the customer. For example, if you're logging a sales call, if you're in the middle of a sales call that's open, if you are using the system to dial out to call the customer, it will pop up these script questions, or you can do it manually to gather this information. And here's where you put the question sets in. The code field is just a free-form field or table-driven field for whatever you'd like to use it for. The sales rank and sales and margin rank fields are updated by a nightly job that tells you where the customer is in sales ranking and where the customer is in margin ranking. Number 1 is the highest ranked margin customer. Number 1 in sales is the highest ranked sales customer. Then you have first quote, first sale, first order, historical information. You've got 5 code fields. Again, these can be renamed to set whatever field name that's relevant for your company. You have filter fields, which is the same sort of thing. These are used on some reports for filtering. Again, they're 1-character fields that can be used for recording any sort of information that you want. Then we have sales history, last year, year before that, lifetime sales. Then how much the customer has returned, how much the customer had defective, how much stock balancing the customer did, and what other RAs. Stock balancing is a process where if your customers carry a large amount of stock, you may have a policy agreement with them that they can rotate their stock through, send back some stuff, order other stuff to balance their stock, and this just keeps track of how much the customer does of that. The user fields, again, these are all site-specific fields, 1-character, 8-character, 15-character, and then numeric, that you can use to store any sort of information you want. They've become a little bit obsolete because of the use of attributes, but the advantage of these are it's easier to do a query using a field that is in a customer record or in a record than a joined table. Ship-tos is where it gets a little more interesting. The ship-to table is a child table of the customer table. That means that one customer record can have multiple ship-to records. Every ship-to record must point to a customer record. The link between the ship-to record and the customer record is by account number. We can go into a ship-to record and see what we have. The account number, the ship-to ID is an internal counter that just uniquely identifies it. Type is a free form, status is a free form, store number is a numeric field that lets you identify the ship-to address as a particular store number. For example, Nordstrom's has hundreds of stores and they identify them by store number. The sales rep associated with the ship-to. This is used in situations where you have a customer that has locations in multiple geographic areas, and the headquarters may be in New York, but they have stores in Chicago and in California, and the sales to these stores are associated with a different sales rep than the parent company. Source is a free form field. Then moving down to the address, this is the ship-to address, the ship-to company name, address, state, country, city, zip, whether or not it's a residential address, a contact name, and just like on the customer record, we can map it, we can validate it, or we can override it. 2 phone numbers, a fax number, a delivery contact, and a phone and title for the delivery contact. The delivery contact pulls the contact information from the customer's contact and then stores it in here. Then we have doc codes. Doc codes is a field that's used for people that have other than parcel shipments, and that indicates what type of loading dock they have, whether you have to deliver to them with a high truck, a low truck, a self-unloader, crane unloader, whatever different type of equipment is required for this ship-to address. And then again, we have the weather information, and I don't have it pointed at the National Weather Service at the moment. I'll make a point of doing that for next week. Then continuing down the side, we've got 5 code fields. These are just additional fields that can be table driven to contain information that is relevant to this ship-to address. Now we get to our beloved area of tax information. Sales tax in the United States, in the vast majority of cases, is based upon where the goods are shipped to. The prominent exception to that is California, where there are some very exotic rules about whether you use the ship to location or you use the ship from location for sales tax. And we'll leave that for people that deal with local sales in California. In most cases, sales tax is charged where the goods are shipped to. So, for example, if your company is in Arkansas and you ship to California and you have enough business in California that you either have Nexus or California thinks you have Nexus, you have to collect sales tax in 84 different districts. And there are about 6 or 7 different rates spread across those 84 districts. So therefore, the ship-to information is controlling for sales tax. The sales tax information that we set up in the customer record is only used to default the ship-to. The ship-to is actually what controls the sales tax collection. So you have a certificate number. You would normally have a list of all of the states that you have certificates from your customer for sales tax exemption here, and you'd pick one. Then this is a company ID. This is used for situations where the state gives the company a specific sales tax ID. You can record that there. The type, if they're retail, if this is a retail ship to, then there is no tax certificate and sales tax is going to be charged. If it is a resale certificate, then it tells you couldn't find one for this state, so you're going to have a problem. The order is going to get put on hold. Now, when you set up the address here and you go through the zip code field, it's going to default the tax code for you. So every time a new ship to address is set up, you need to make sure that the tax information is correct. And you, in certain cases, have ship tos that are tax exempt and ship tos that are taxable. For example, again, your company is based in Arkansas, you're shipping to California, you might have enough business in California with your resellers there that you can get a reseller certificate. You have another reseller that you sell to in Florida, and this reseller does not, or this reseller's location there does not want to go through the trouble of getting a sales tax certificate, so they want you to collect the sales tax. So this ship to address becomes retail, even though the customer itself is a resale customer. Another example would be if you sell to JPL Laboratories. JPL Laboratories is a big research operation outside of Berkeley, California, and they get contracts from the government and from private companies to do research. When they order something from you, they will tell you this is for a government contract, therefore don't charge us sales tax, or this is for in-house use, charge us sales tax. And what most people do is they'll set up two different ship to addresses, one that's taxable, one that's not taxable, in order to make their life easier. So sales tax and ship tos are very, very much intertwined. You can put a ship to note for every ship to address that's printed on the shipping documents if your documents are large enough, and it pops up during order entry optionally. So you could have a note on there that says, this facility only accepts deliveries between 10 and 11 in the morning, or goods should be left, around back because nobody's there during the day. So anything that's tied to a particular ship to address, you can put the information there. I remember from many years ago with Ohio Scientific, we were shipping to places in Africa, and there was a ship to note in there saying, put rat poison in the bottom of the boxes because the rats eat their way through it, and this keeps them from chewing on the electronics. So all sorts of stuff can be in the ship to note. The Logistic tabs lets you set up a specific ship via for this ship to address. A situation where I've seen that used is shipments to small places in Alaska are only available by air. UPS and FedEx don't deliver ground to these villages. So if something is being shipped to them, it can't go UPS ground, it has to go UPS blue or UPS red. Via terms is the same thing, what the shipping terms are. You may have a situation where you normally pay the freight. However, for these extreme addresses, the customer pays the freight. And you have room for a billing account for third-party billing that says when you ship to this address, use this billing account. This is something that you might use with a company like Office Depot, Office Max, where depending upon which store you're shipping to, they may want you to use a specific UPS account number because they pay the freight and they want to track their inbound freight by store. And the ship pay code defines how the shipping should be charged, collect, bill to third party, and bill ultimate consignee. And there's some very collect means when the driver shows up, he says, give me the money for the freight. Bill to third party means that a third party is paying the freight. So you're drop shipping something for Amazon, and it's going to be charged to Amazon's UPS account. That's a third party billing. Bill the ultimate consignee is a slightly different type of billing. You're shipping something to Amazon, but you're shipping it to their warehouse and they're paying the freight. So it's being billed to them. It's not being collected at the door. There's very small difference between bill to third party and bill to ultimate consignee, but it's required that you select the correct one. Default location indicates what the default location to ship from is for this ship to address. So there are two ways that this is used. Normally, the way the system is configured, when you enter an order in order entry, the system defaults to the preferred location for that zip code. If you don't have the preferred location set up in the zip code file, you can specify a preferred location for this customer based upon this field in the ship to address. Then the default field here lets you set three things. Normal just means that it's a ship to address. Yes means that this is the default ship to address for the customer. And F means this is the fulfillment return address that should be used if the customer's documents are flagged to have a different return address when you're doing fulfillment. It's not really a ship to address, but we store the address here instead of creating another table to store the fulfillment return address. This field, the custom shipping label, allows you. We use a product called List and Label for generating forms and shipping labels. And it allows the form to be selected at runtime and filled in and maintained on a site-by-site basis for any number of different forms. So certain customers require certain shipping labels. For example, Nestle, when ICG ships a product for Dell to Nestle, the ship to label needs to have a asset number on it and needs to have a location on it. So the shipping label will say Nestle Corporation, New York facility, 410 7th Avenue, location, 35th floor, room 5, asset number 123. That's normally not on regular shipping labels. So you have a custom shipping label, and the name of that custom shipping label goes here, and the invoicing program manifesting uses that. Then you have the Gen code, which can be refreshed if you have the web service, and this loads the physical address or the latitude and longitude of the physical address of this location. And this is used for a couple of different things. It's used for weather. It's used for determining what the nearest location is. And it's used for determining sales tax. When you have the sales tax web service and you add a new ship to, when it goes out and determines what the sales tax is for that location or for that address, it will fill in the Geo Code so it doesn't have to make that call the next time. So that is our ship-to record. Do we have any questions dealing with ship-tos at the moment? Nope, no ship-to questions. Okay. Then we'll move on here to advanced. The advanced tab is where we just drop all sorts of miscellaneous stuff. Default order entry type is either loaner, quote, or sales order, and this determines what order type is defaulted when you select to enter an order for this customer. A sales order is clear a sales order. A quote is clear what a quote is. A loaner basically means you're entering a type of sales order where you're telling the warehouse to ship something to somebody, but you're not going to invoice them. It's a loaner. That means you're lending it to them for evaluation, for a trade show, for any number of reasons, but you expect to get it back. What happens at invoicing time or shipment time is if it's a loaner order, the system creates what's called a shipper document instead of an invoice. The goods leave inventory and are recorded in the loaner or pending table, and only a packing list is generated, no invoice is generated. And further down in the training, we'll get to loaners and pending and how to process them. GSA is a flag whether or not this customer is on the GSA schedule. Console code is a consolidation code. Some people receive, for example, our customer Cy Kessler is a battery distributor down in Texas. They'll receive ongoing orders from, let's say, Zales stores. And the Zales stores will place their orders as they need the stuff, but Kessler only ships to them once a week. So what happens is during the course of a week, they may get 4 orders for one store, and this consolidation code tells the system how those orders should be consolidated into a single shipment and a single invoice. Then consolidated release. If there's a value in here, you can tell the system that accept orders for this customer until you get to a certain value, and at that point release them and ship them. So in the case of Zales, the stores automatically by EDI order batteries. The batteries cost anywhere from pennies to dollars. And Zales doesn't want a shipment being made for $2 worth of batteries. So they set it up that until the order has a value of $20 or $25, just accumulate the orders and then ship it. You have a default division and default department. That allows you to set up the division and department that the order should be assigned to when the order is created. In the stream system, the difference between a division and a department is a department is a cost center, which means it has income and expenses, so you can produce a profit and loss or income statement for a department. A division has balance sheet accounts and is normally a separate company. So you can have a situation where you have multiple companies, usually owned by the same entity, operating out of the same warehouse, where you have one company that sells to retailers, one company sells on the web, and a third company sells locally or to resellers or end consumers, and they all share the same customer base and the same product information, but they're different divisions because they have different financial statements and produce separate tax returns. And then on a periodic basis, you perform intercompany reconciliation, and that's covered in the accounting training. Then moving to the right, we have web access. You have an internet code that allows this company to access the e-commerce. You have a credit reference code. This can be given out to people when somebody contacts your company and wants a credit reference on somebody. You can give them this code. They can go to your e-commerce site and they can download a credit reference. Then web ship edit, that's a flag that says when this customer places orders on the e-commerce website, do we allow them to create or edit ship to addresses, or do they only ship to one spot? This is a security feature. It defaults to no, so that if you have a customer, they can only ship goods to their ship to address. They can't create a new one or edit it. This is a security issue in case somebody gets their login credentials. They can't log into your system and order stuff and have it shipped somewhere else. Then we have currency surcharge up and down. The currency surcharge feature is used when you sell in multiple currencies. So, for example, you're shipping products to Europe and you're selling them in euros. You can determine using these who carries the risk of currency fluctuations. If the euro today is $1.20 per euro and you've priced something in euros, you can say, using this, that you will absorb any changes in exchange rate up to 5%. If the exchange rate changes by more than 5%, then we've got to renegotiate the price. Then moving down, you have a default bank account, default bank and default bank account. This lets you set up a customer bank account and bank in order to do ACH, automatic withdrawal, that when you send an invoice, it automatically sucks the money out of their account. Moving over to the left here, we have our EDI processing codes for orders, quotes, confirmations, shipments, invoices, statements, dunning letters, and reports. And this tells us how they are processed. For example, for invoices, the E code means that the invoices are all emailed to this customer. You have other codes in there, A, B, and C, for example. A means that invoices for this customer are sent only for EDI orders. B means invoices for this customer are sent by EDI for all orders. C means invoices for this customer for EDI orders are sent by EDI, and orders that are not received by EDI get sent by email. So depending upon how your EDI implementations are, you can set the codes in here, and that's covered in the EDI training. Here we have the Geo Code for the customer, just like we talked about for the ship to and latitude and longitude. Now we get to comments. Comments are stored in a separate table. Each comment can be up to whatever the table limit is, in most cases 32,000 or 64,000 characters. The comments have what are called line numbers, and it's really the comment number. Comment numbers between 1 and 999 are general comments, and you basically only go to a new comment after you've filled up the first one with 30,000 or 60,000 characters. Comment numbers above 1,000 are reserved for certain things, and you can see that by hitting the plus key, and the plus key lets you create a comment, and it shows you a list of all the different types of comments that are available for your particular company. You can have a quote comment, a pick list comment. The pick list comment prints on every pick list for this customer. The invoice comment prints on every invoice for the customer. The pick list and invoice comment prints on every pick list and invoice. And the reason you have a difference is the invoice comment might say, "We appreciate your business and look forward to working with your company on a certain project." The pick list comment might say, "Don't screw up on picking. This customer is really sensitive about stuff. Make sure that there's a nice ribbon on every box." And you don't want that comment to show on the customer invoice. That's an internal comment. Bill of lading comment gets printed on a bill of lading. It's information for the trucker. The hold comment is a comment that is available to the people who process holds and may tell them what to do when orders for this customer go on hold. Call Fred if it's a price hold. Call Mary if it's a credit hold. Packing list comment is a comment that just goes on the packing list. Special shipping instructions for the customer. The order entry comment pops up during order entry, and that may be something like, "Only accept verbal orders from Bob. Anybody else at the company needs to send POs." The credit and collection comments are comments that are maintained by your in-house staff. So here we've set up a credit comment, and we have a timestamp button. So every time we add text to this comment, we can timestamp it if we'd like. Now on production systems, you would actually have the comment name here. I just don't have that field displayed on my development area. So any questions on comments? Comments are widely used in the system and a very important part of Stream. Okay, no questions. We go over here to opportunities. The opportunity system as such will be addressed separately, but you can create opportunities which are, like the word says, opportunities for future business or future sales, and they can be viewed and managed from the customer detail panel. Opportunities are a whole separate training session. Then we can go to incidents and actions. An incident is commonly used when the customer calls you about something. They may call you and say, "Hey, I got the shipment from you. However, one of the things in the shipment was broken. You need to send me another one or a credit." So you can create an incident here, and then you can create actions, and the action might be instructing the salesman to call the customer and find out what the customer would like to do. Incidents are used for any sort of customer interaction where you have an event that you want to record actions or issue an RA against an incident, a whole series of things you can do. And again, that's a separate training class. Actions are used throughout the system to track or control different things. An action is a workflow control item. You can have 3 different states for an action. An action can be closed. That means that it's recording that you did something, who did it, how long it took, and notes about it. An action can be open, and that means something needs to be done and who should do it and when they should do it. And an action can have an in-process status, which means the task is being worked on. Typically, you'll use actions when you're talking to a customer and a customer says, you know, I'm really interested in this product. Can you have somebody who's expert at it give me a call? So you can create an action, assign the action to somebody, give it a date, and then that action will show up when they log into the system under their My Actions. These are all the actions that are assigned to me. So that allows you to assign tasks to people, send literature, call customer, follow up on an invoice or an opportunity. Very powerful, used for all sorts of things. And just like images and comments, actions can be attached to just about any type of document. Then we have our contacts. Again, we have a list of contacts. Each customer can have an unlimited number of contacts. The contact is linked by the account number to the customer record, first name, last name, title, salutation, whether or not it's an active contact. Type is free form, what rep this contact is associated with. Some phone numbers, what language this contact speaks, email address to that contact, and a company name if the contact is not assigned to a customer. This is used for prospecting and lead generation. You can create a contact that's not assigned to a customer because your company policy might be don't create customer records until we're actually going to sell something to them, so that we don't have all these dead prospects in the customer file, in which case you create a contact record, and the contact, since all contacts have to be tied to a customer, default to be assigned to the unassigned contacts customer. And then you can store the actual customer's name in here. And when it gets far enough along that you're going to create a quote or an order for that customer, you can convert this contact and use the information to create a customer record, and then this contact becomes assigned to that customer record. Again, you've got the weather group and the time zone that the customer is in, or contact is in, to be exact. You can have a separate address for the contact, and then you've got a switch here to say mail to the company address or the contact's address. You have 15 code fields here that you can use for tracking whatever specific information you want about that contact. You've got demographics, what department they're in, a reference, what level they are, birthday, where the contact's from, when you got it, a call pattern. Call pattern is used when you have the system generate call orders or call actions. So you can say, create actions for my salespeople or customer service. I want them to call this customer once every 2 months just to see how they're doing. And you can put a call code in and then have a job create action records, which show up under My Actions. Then you've got some specific information. This is the contact you market to. It's the IT contact. Accounts payable. So that's the customer contact that would get the invoices. Is this the one you email statements to? Is it management? Do you contact them about orders? And do you send the dunning letters to them? So those fields are used for the process automation stuff to pick which contact or contacts get these type of documents. Then you've got web information. If this contact has a specific website, whether or not they're allowed to log into your website, what date they accepted the terms and conditions, what their login ID is, and what their e-commerce password are, or you can generate a new password and email it to the contact. And this is their user ID. If this contact is also a user or operator in your system, then their user ID goes into there. Then this is a field that allows you to control what database access they have through the e-commerce, whether they are a web administrator. This means they can set up additional contacts or people who can place orders on your website, and you can control what menu options this contact can get to and what their access rights are. Comments, again, you can have an unlimited number of comments per contact. Actions that are contact specific. Documents, emails, or letters that you've sent to this contact. Attributes, and we'll get to attributes when we go back to the customer. And advanced, which are some, again, where we put the oddball stuff. If you have Outlook on your workstation, you can automatically synchronize your contacts with your Outlook. You can export it, and you can generate mail merge documents for this contact. So that's our contact detail. Entity is used to track legal information about the company. What type of company is this? Is it a government corporation? Is it a department, a joint venture, a partnership, public? Is it a state? Is it a trust? What type of company it is? What's the status of this company? Are they normal, blank? Are they in bankruptcy, in liquidation, different statuses? Then identification numbers, their federal ID number, their state ID number, and other numbers that you might want to track about it. And what is the parent company? Parent and child companies are situations. Take our Pacific Bell example. The parent company is Pacific Bell, but they have individual operating companies in different areas of California, but Central Pacific Bell pays the bills. So you may want to produce reports on what your sales are to the whole Pacific Bell entity, or you may want to run reports to a specific operating company. So the parent company lets you link companies with their parent, or you can click on the button and it'll give you a list of all the companies that are children of the current company. Attributes allow you to store additional information about something, either a customer, a catalog item, an invoice, an order, that we just don't have homes for. And attributes are stored in sets. You can have attribute sets. Here, for example, is an EDI attribute set. You can select that, and those are just the names of stored attributes. For example, here we go. What is the default ship via for drop ship orders from this customer? What is the default ship via for stocking orders from this customer? What EDI line codes get suppressed? Basically, any sort of tidbits of information that need to be stored with the customer that are either used programmatically or by operators can be stored in the attributes. The attributes over time are replacing things like these user fields, because you can have an unlimited number of attributes and values. Now, the values for the attribute can be set up to be either free form, or you can set it up to point to a Geo Code table or a lookup. So you could restrict the ship via dropship attributes to a certain subset of all of your ship vias. And when we get to order entry, you'll see how these attributes can also be used to gather additional information at order entry time. An example of that is Data Access Corporation, the publisher of the DataFlex language, uses StreamV internally, when they enter an order for one of their products, during order entry, they'll say runtime license, and it'll then pop up a list of attributes and say, does this runtime license have connectivity? How many users is it? What other types of special information about this item need to be captured during order entry? And then those attributes are used during price calculation, carried over to the invoice, and then stored in perpetuity. So attributes are just additional information about anything that you want to store, and it's available in sets. We have the EDI attribute set. We can then add shipping attributes, and in this case we only have one called ship pay code as a default, because not every customer will have all of the same attributes. You may have 1,000 customers, but only maybe doing EDI with 10 of them. So you only add the EDI attributes to those customers that you're actually doing EDI with. So that covers or ends the session on the customer detail. Now would be a really good time to ask any questions you have about customers, contacts, or ship tos. So floor is open for discussion. Either no questions or everybody's asleep. So moving on, we only have about 13 minutes left for today. So I really hate to start the catalog area, because that's a real big area. Is there any area anybody would like me to talk about today in the last 10 minutes of the meeting?
Frank, this is Nathaniel. I have a quick question. If a customer, say, wants to create a new tab on the customer management panel there, can they create a new tab and then put different fields there if they want on the fly, or is that the kind of thing there where you would have to make an update to the application? Thank you.
We'd have to make an update to the application. They would do that by adding attributes. The language we use doesn't really lend itself to adding tabs on the fly. It is programmatically possible, but it adds such a workload to the system and complexity that we decided it wasn't a worthwhile thing to program. What we have done is we have added the ability to have different detail tabs, and let me see if we got a couple of minutes if I can show that. Okay. Okay, what I just did in the system is I told the system that we are running a vertical market application called AutoShop. And what the system then does is whenever you drill down into a detail panel, the first thing it does is say, am I running a vertical? If I'm running a vertical, then I go out and I look, do I have a vertical detail panel? So for AutoShop, we have a much simpler customer detail panel that only has the company, cell numbers. It happens to show their serial numbers, which in a production system are going to be the vehicles for the customer. And there's just a whole lot less information for setting up a new customer and maintaining it. Or you can go to the Advanced tab button here, and the Advanced button then brings up the full customer detail record. So if you have customers that don't need all of the information that's on a panel, we can create vertical panels, and then those vertical panels are called by the application as they're available. So that allows us to customize the interface without having to make changes to the base Stream application.
Oh, that's really interesting. So a customer is in a vertical market, for example, here, auto parts, and you can customize the panel for them.
Yeah, you create a new. This allows us to create. What we looked at is we said, do we want to create a whole new application for specific verticals? And auto repair shop, not parts, has a much smaller subset of data that you have to deal with, both in the customer record and in the catalog record and other places. So instead of generating a whole new application that has to be maintained and delivered, we said, okay, we're just going to create vertical panels, and the code that pops up a panel checks if there's a vertical, if you're running in a vertical mode, and if there is a vertical panel, it'll then pop it up instead of the default panel, and have an advanced button that takes you back to the default panel if for some reason you need to get to it.
Can the headings and field names be changed in the panel as well?
Well, for in the vertical panel, you can change them. For example, using the edit field label, like that. But you normally wouldn't do that, because the whole purpose of creating a vertical is to use the terminology and the fields that they need. So on a vertical panel, you would normally by default have the correct terminology.
I'm talking about like the code, like you have code 1, code 2, code 3.
Oh yeah, those are all changeable, but you wouldn't have them. You wouldn't have those on a vertical panel, because the whole idea of a vertical is you've already made it very, very specific. You could have them if you wanted to, but in most cases you won't. In the general system here, for example, on the code fields and stuff like that, you can of course change them. And call them whatever you want. But like, for example, on the liquor store module, whenever we get around to that, you would have a separate customer detail panel like this for liquor store that would have the liquor store relevant fields on it.
Right.
Instead
How
of
about inventory? Is this feature available on inventory screen?
This feature is available on all panels.
Okay, great.
So let me switch this back so I don't forget. And here you see I did this with a policy record. Now, this is one of those, the vertical market is one of those base level items that only gets checked as the system comes up. It's not something you can change on the fly.